One of the best ways of fishing on commercials is with the method feeder. But are you doing it right? I've learnt loads about this style of fishing over the years, and I'm going to share with you a few tips and tricks that's going to make this deadly tactic even better. We're in the mid to late months of spring now. There's still a bit of a nip in the air. The water is quite clear, still a bit cold, but the sun is out. And that is an ideal time to be targeting around about 3 foot to 2.5 foot of water. Not the shallowest water in your lake, because as I said, still a little bit clear and carp won't feed confidently there. So as a rule of thumb, I'd be looking at just about 1 metre off the far bank of an island. Find that 3 foot of water, and trust me, you'll catch a lot more fish as a result. You might be wondering, how do I find 3 foot of water? And it's not easy when you are fishing method feeder, but I look to put a little bomb on my speed stem, chuck it out, and when that bomb hits the surface, sinks down to the bottom, just over a second, that's going to be the perfect 3 foot. Hardware for the method feeder, keep it mega simple, but one really important part of this style of fishing is durability. It's got to be up to the job and not let you down. So, kicking off, got an Aventus 4000 reel there. It's loaded with 8-pound Pulse Pro. I absolutely love this stuff. It's really bulletproof, strong, and most importantly, you can cast nice and accurately because it's not too thick. So then on to the rod choice. I really like a 10-foot rod. And I've got an Engage Pro 10 foot there, nice and soft, but it's still got enough power there to land anything you're likely to hook on commercials. I've caught some massive fish on this rod. Trust me, it bends all the way through and you feel like you're never ever going to lose a fish. It's brilliant. And in terms of the tips that you actually use, I'll always try and use a lighter tip than I'd actually need. So say I'm fishing up to around about 25 metres, I've only got a 0.75 ounce tip on. And that's important because I don't want my feeder to move once it's on the bottom. And if my tip is too stiff and too heavy, if the carp does actually move my line or get a liner, I think it's going to disrupt that feeder and potentially move it when it's on the bottom. So use a nice soft tip and you'll get a much better presentation. Down to the business end, I've got a little loop in my main line and I'm literally hooking on a short speed stem which has got a 30-gram mini method feeder on there. I'll always use a speed stem or an elasticated stem where I'm allowed. I think you get a much better hook hold, the fish bolt against the feeder, the whole feeder weight, and you lose less fish as well because you've got that lovely soft elastic there to cushion the fish. And one key thing about why I like to use this actual system is because you can have a couple of feeders on the go all the time. I think it keeps you really efficient. It's a very handy feature that is, because you can literally reel your feeder back in, hopefully you've landed a fish, pull that little tail rubber up there, loop another feeder on and you're ready to go in a matter of seconds. It's also good if you want to try and experiment with a few different hook baits. You can have a couple of feeders on the go, one with say a wafter and another feeder with a little band on there with a pellet on. And in terms of the size of feeder that you actually use, personally I like to use a smaller feeder at this time of year. It's not the height of summer, the fish aren't ravenous, and I'm not looking to put loads and loads of bait on the bottom all the time. So I stick to a mini size feeder, got the mini 30-gram method on there. That's a lovely amount of pellets or ground bait per cast, and I think it's just the right amount to not overfill your swim. Then finishing off the rig, got a 4-inch hook length there, which I'm going to house my hook bait to, and that is the method feeder setup. Dead simple, but very effective. It's important to carry a few different hook bait options when you're doing this style of fishing because you never actually know what's going to be the best. So I've got wafters with me, that's my go-to, my number one. Then I've got hard pellets, they're actually 6mm activated pellets. I like that meaty smell on the pellets and carp absolutely love them. So I've got a few of them. And then I've got dead maggots. That can be absolutely brilliant, especially at this time of year. Just before the carp start to spawn, maggots are a brilliant hook bait, loads of protein in them. So you need them 3 options just to cover any eventuality. It's important that you've got the right hook length on when you're using these baits. When I'm fishing with wafters, I always like a bayonet. So I've got a QM1 with a bayonet, mega combo that. And one thing to keep in your head is you need that wafter to sit up and your hook nice and flat. You'll get a brilliant hook hold that way. Then pellets, got a nice little band on there. I think you get a really good presentation with a band when you're fishing with hard pellets. And finally, we have maggots. I use a different hook for this. A 16 or a 14 SLWG is a brilliant hook for it. And make sure you hook your maggots through the thin end. 2 maggots is my go-to, but if I'm fishing for bigger carp, 3 can be brilliant. The baits I'm going to be moulding around the method feeder. My go-to is always micro pellets, 2mm pellets. Fish absolutely love them. Today we're at Kiveton Waters and we have to use fishery feed pellets, which is the same for a lot of you watching this film. And all I do to actually soak them pellets and make sure they're perfect, 2mm pellets, I soak them for around about 2 minutes. So all I'll do, get the pellets in a little strainer, fill it with water, totally submerge them, leave them for 2 minutes, get the strainer out of the water, leave them for around about 10 seconds, drain all that water off, get them in a nice big round bowl and give them around about 30 minutes and they'll be absolutely perfect. The next bait is ground bait. I wouldn't start on this. I want to use ground bait as a bit of an impact. So all I've done for the ground bait front in terms of preparing it, I've got 1 pint of 100% ground expander, 1 pint of green supreme, put them in a bowl, and then I've added a pint of water. Mix that through, get it through a maggot riddle, and that will be absolutely mint to go around a method feeder. Another little bait combo which can work brilliantly is 50-50 ground bait and micro pellets. Sometimes you don't know what the best bait is, so a combo of both can be the best of both worlds. Really important part of this style of fishing is not moving that feeder once it has hit the bottom. As Tommy Pickering always says, don't move the feeder. It's actually really important because you want to create that perfect little trap, and if you move it once it's on the bottom, it's not fishing effectively. So I'm going to cast her out there, hit my clip, line's nice and straight, feeder's on the bottom. Now I'll literally drop my rod on the front reaper rest, in the back reaper. I'm in the perfect fishing position. Got quite a tight line on my tip. You might be thinking, God, it looks way too tight. I actually like that tight tension. I've got a 30 gram feeder on, so I know it's not going to move. It's nice and heavy, but I like a tight tip because I think you get a much better hook hold. They bolt off once they pick the hook bait up, they feel the feeder and they bolt off and it digs that hook in. And I like that, and that is how I set the rod. I know I'm not going to move the feeder at all. Everything's fishing perfectly. How long you actually leave your feeder for in the lake at this time of year, it's a little bit different to the winter months. You're not having long casts, and method feeder in particular is all about being active, casting regularly for me. I won't leave that feeder in for any longer than 3 minutes. I want to get that competition going, build my peg up, and the bites will almost come naturally quicker, and that's what I'll be looking for. That's why the method feeder can be so deadly. The length of your hook length is very important when you're fishing the method feeder or the hybrid feeder, anything like that. It's so important that you're using 4 inches. We did the underwater and that proved that too short a hook length wasn't effective enough. The fish couldn't suck the hook bait in far enough and get a good hook hold. So stick to that 4-inch length and it'll be mega when you're fishing the method feeder. Loading the method feeder. This is probably one of the trickiest parts of this style of fishing, and it's easy to get wrong, but one important part of it, you've got to have the bait in perfect condition. So first of all, make sure you've got a little EVA tub with a lid on. When it's sunny, your baits can dry out like mad, and that will definitely affect your presentation and how your method feeder is actually loaded. So I'm going to go into my bait. Today I'm using ground bait and pellets 50-50, and I always like to use a method mould. It keeps everything nice and easy, very quick, and I'm always putting the same amount of bait on every single time so I can regulate it. And to be honest, I'm just much quicker and smoother with the method mould. So how you actually use it, got my bait, I'm just going to fill that main bowl of the method mould there, and then I'm going to position my hook bait right in the middle, making sure that my hook length is facing at the bottom of the method mould. So my hook length and everything is going to be positioned at the bottom, perfect presentation. Then I'm literally going to sandwich that hook bait in with some more ground bait and pellets. I'm going to put my method feeder right in the middle of the mould. Using my 2 thumbs, I'm going to give it a good squeeze, compact it on, sandwich it in there like that, and get the little bit at the back of the method mould, push it out, and you'll be left with a perfectly loaded little method feeder. Now it's just a case of firing her out there and setting that trap. A little trick that can work really well when you're doing this style of fishing is to actually double cast. And what I mean by that is chuck your feeder out with pellets or ground bait on, chuck it out and empty it as soon as it hits the surface, and then instantly get back in, load your feeder back up and chuck back in that same spot. It can just be a little bit of an impact and trigger a bite.